Hey all, how are you doing today? I just got off work. Got myself some wine. Gonna go home, have a nice drink, play some cyberpunk. um, what has been banging around in my head today is, without a doubt, I've been thinking a lot about the mental health of the nation and the mental health of our communities and ourselves. And I was thinking about myself not that long ago, right? Yesterday, in fact, I was thinking a lot about myself and how I live in the world and who I am, and I feel as though this year, and we've been joking about this. It feels like we're constantly telling this kind of joke of like, oh, 2020, it feels like it's been going on for years and years. But it does feel like it's been going on for years and years, and it feels as though one of the things I was just talking to my father about just yesterday was how it feels like I've aged considerably more this year than it has any other year. That this year I feel like I'm heading towards 40, certainly, so middle age is something I've got to kind of lean into and get ready for. And but I feel like I've aged well into that. I I don't feel, even last year I would have felt like, oh well, no, I'm still like 30 or in my late 20s. I don't feel that way right now, and I think that lots of people don't feel that way. I feel like lots of people are feeling like this year has aged them, and that we are not the young, kind of virile people we once were. And it's plaguing our mental health, and it's plaguing the mental health of the nation, I think. And the fact is one of the major things that has impacted our mental health, like if you're a worker, so I won't talk about the workers quite yet, but if you're a person in an elderly home, right? You've been completely isolated and quarantined in a way that is drastic, necessary, but drastic. And nothing is being done to ameliorate that, right? And that's one thing I think that's really key when we're talking about this, is that, like, the mental health of the workers is in severe decline because their expendability has been made explicit. That previously it was always, oh, you're expendable in a job sort of sense. We'll just replace you, is what the capitalists would tell us, right? That you are eternally replaceable. But now that expendability has extended outside of the realm of the company or the capitalists and their business structures, and instead is reflecting in how they value your very lives, right? You're not just expendable insofar as we can replace you and continue doing business. You are expendable to the point where if we put you in a situation where you might die, that's completely fine, because your the amount of profit you make me is the only thing that is valuable. Which is why, like, I take a look, and I think it would be wise of us to take a look at a nation like China to see what it's doing, how it's moving forward. How is it that it has stronger economic growth than we do, while simultaneously having almost no cases whatsoever? How has it done that, right? What are the sacrifices that the Chinese people are willing to make? What are the decisions that they are willing to make. Why are they willing to make those decisions? Why are they willing to do these sorts of things? And my view is that right now, I'm trying to find a fun, better way to articulate this. And I think I have. Right now, we are being ruled by a class of people who are arguing in favor of what they call freedom, right? But anyone with sense in their brain would call chaos, right? This is the thing. They use this word freedom, but freedom implies that there's some sort of opposing force that should be overthrown, or should be ignored, or should be dismantled, right? That's why they use the word freedom. They say, we should have freedom, but freedom to do what, right? And it turns out they want freedom to enslave others. That's what the freedom is all about. And the conversation isn't actually about freedom. And it never was, right? That's just a little sloganistic doublespeak propaganda to use the word freedom. What they're actually talking about is chaos. That's what they're actually talking about. They're saying we should have no restrictions, we should have no laws to prevent us from moving in one way or another. It should be that the mightiest survive. That might makes right. And ultimately, they're just saying, because there should be no sober reflection, there should be no attempt to make decisions as a collective, all things should be structured so that chaos reigns completely, and that the person who is able to manipulate this chaos and create any semblance or sense of order from out of this chaos is the person who should be the most successful, right? That if you are born into the world with $1 billion and you can force people to work for you because the choice is between them starving or you or enslaving themselves to whatever structure it is you have erected for your own benefit, then that's considered a great capitalist success. So the title that I think we should officially start giving capitalists is we should start calling them Chaos Death Knights. Because that's basically what they are, right? They worship death and destruction and chaos to a level that is... It has to be called religious. It has to be. There's no other way to describe it at this point. The worship of money and the worship of accumulation and the worship of wealth. And what they're willing to do and what they're willing to sacrifice is obvious, right? They're willing to sacrifice people's lives to accrue wealth for themselves. And the only reason here in Canada why they stopped and actually moved forward to prevent the maximization of death, unlike unlike anywhere in the United States, which charged full scale into the sacrifice and the death. The only reason we actually did it is because the political class was afraid of the backlash that it would cause. That we still actually do have some shred of a functioning democracy in Canada. And because of that, like, if everybody goes to the polls and vote NDP, then that's it. That's what happens. And if the political class is seen as being incompetent or unwilling to prevent mass-scale death, unlike in the United States, where they just kind of threw up their hands and said, oh well, then they will lose power. The the Chaos Death Knights, like the United States is absolutely emblematic of this worship of wealth, right? Their theory, their chaos theory, right? Which you can call trickle down economics, you can call libertarianism if you like, you can just call capitalism or free market capitalism, laissez-faire capitalism, I've heard it called, neoliberalism. Any of this, it's all just chaos reigns. That's really the slogan. Chaos reigns. Whoever has the most bombs or the most capacity to build bombs and can do as they want on the world stage through sheer force of violence while plundering whatever they can in order to do it and enslaving whoever they can. And if the populace is apathetic, gullible, or stupid enough to allow these things to continue, then they will. And it's not going to be until the populace destroys itself that it will actually start to figure out or start to even begin to investigate what actually happened. That's why Canadians don't actually take seriously the investigation of the genocide of the First Nations people here in Canada. Like, we know it's happened, but we're not really taking it seriously. We don't really investigate that much time and effort into it because it doesn't really affect our day-to-day lives, we believe. Because we refuse to put together the idea that if we are a people who are willing to commit genocide against other people, then certainly we are a people who are willing to commit all kinds of atrocities to each other and ourselves. That right now, most Canadians feel protected by their whiteness. That's what protects most Canadians. And those are the lines that the conversation has been drawn along. That if you are a white Canadian, you are a citizen of Canada, certainly, and you are afforded rights and privileges that you have gullibly believed you cannot lose. And you can. You can. And if your nation is going around bombing brown people, it's only a matter of time before they bomb white people, and they change the way the lines are drawn. And those lines will be drawn economically. That if you don't have at least, I'll be kind and say $1 million, right? If you don't have at least that, you simply won't be allowed in the club, and it doesn't matter what you look like. And when it happens, people will be astounded by it. They'll be like, oh, what's happening? I don't understand. I thought we were all in this together. And it's quite a joke. Quite a joke that will be played on them, and they will be the butt of it. And men like me will sit around and giggle at them while we both starve. And the Chaos Death Knights, right? What's so dangerous about these guys, generally speaking, is that the reason why the United States is the disaster that it is because they don't have anybody in power. Like, Donald Trump is taking the brunt of it because he's certainly the face of it, but it's endemic of the entire system, right? The entire system is loaded from top to bottom of people who believe that institutions and any kind of structure should simply not exist. And if it does exist, it should exist for the benefit of the business and the corporation, right? So when something like a pandemic comes through, right, they don't have anybody in power to begin with who actually believes that the way to resolve this issue is through organized, powerful institutions, right? They're the people who are in power in the first place don't think that way. And here's where it gets crazy, right? This is how deep this sort of Death Knight thinking has gone, right? So they don't have people currently in power who believe that, but even more than that, they don't have people, so they don't have the institutions, right? So they don't have the institutions doing it. And then even deeper than that, their entire education system. So I'm talking professors, like university professors, PhD professors with tenure, right? They believe in the chaos theory. They themselves are also Death Knights. So they can't actually come up with a theory that isn't the Death Knight theory, that isn't the chaos theory. They have to move forward because that's what they've been teaching their whole lives. And even though the universe has provided exactly the reason why their ideology is a death cult, and has shown it and laid it bare for everyone to see, that capitalism is a death cult, and that they are chaos death knights ruling within it. Even though it's been laid completely bare, they have to move forward because it's all they know, and they aren't intelligent, and they are illiterate, and they don't even sound very smart anymore, right? Like they sound like idiots. And like you'll have like, you know, people like Malcolm Gladwell, who just looks like a nice little kind little guy telling everybody about all the positive things that are happening in the world that's collapsing and crumbling directly in front of your eyes, and it's obvious, and if you think otherwise, then you're just delusional. But, you know, if you live your whole life at the top of a palace and you don't know anything and you've never met anybody, right, and you don't actually talk to people, you just kind of read your little books and take a look at your facts and figures, you can believe that the world is a wonderful place because you don't actually leave your room, right? Which is why they keep insisting we have to clean it so thoroughly. And so we don't have the institutions, right? The Americans don't have the institutions. They don't have the educators, right? So they can't even begin to teach anything outside of the chaos theory. That it is going to take some sort of educational revolution. Like, for God's sakes, there was an article that came out like 2 years ago, I believe, that actually said, it was in, I believe it was like the Wall Street Journal, this was coming out of like Harvard professors were saying of their economics departments that like, we need to actually start reading and contemplating and considering Karl Marx. And if we don't, it's going to be to our detriment. Hey, how you doing? Just a neighbor. And that's 2 years ago, right? Maybe even a bit later than that. So these people have not even begun to study or read or contemplate or understand their own critics, right? They don't actually know anything about the subject. They just move along teaching supply and demand as if that's the end of economics, and then pretending like trickle-down economics exists. And if you believe that that's the case, then you really are just continuing to erect a death cult that is designed to destroy you, right? Like, imagine trying to convince anybody that you can just grow limitlessly. Like, what are you talking about? That's like a high level ideological delusion. Like, nothing in society, nothing in nature, nothing in our existence works that way. Not one single thing, except in economics. Like, if you cannot be convinced that Western economics is a delusional ideology of a death cult from that alone, it's a tough road for you. It's a tough road for you, I think. Like, that's like akin to trying to convince someone to leave an abusive spouse and them just being like, oh, but I love them so much. It's like, eventually you kind of got to look at it and just be like, okay, sweetie, like, off you go, I guess. Like, I'm not going to be a part of it, you know? But the unfortunate reality is that you can't bail on reality, right? Like, you can't just say, oh, okay, we disagree. So, like, these people are death cultists who are seeking to enslave the society and then destroy it. That's their goal, right? Like, at this stage in the game, like, they talk about this Great Reset stuff, right? They get to talking about the Great Reset, mitigating damage, right? That's what they're interested in. They're not interested in prevention anymore. They're not sitting there being like, oh, this is a major emergency or crisis. I mean, the liberals will say that out loud, but they're only saying it. They'll ban straws, I guess. The But they're not actually interested in prevention. They're not actually interested in altering what's going on. They're interested in mitigation now. They're not interested in attempting to stop the building from collapsing, because I think believe they are of the belief that, oh well, my life will still continue being good, right? This is why, like, a single billionaire is extremely dangerous, because a single billionaire can build a fantasy world around themselves that is so insidious and deceptive that they can believe that they are immune to anything hurting them. It's like it's like a child who doesn't believe they can die, right? You see, like, kids doing things and acting in certain ways, and you can tell they think they're immune to damage, and they think that they're immortal. They don't actually have any sense of their own immortality or their own mortality. And it's the same of these billionaires, right? They believe that they are immune. They think that a collapsing society, or a collapsing social system, a collapsing economy, well, they'll be immune from it, and the worst thing that could happen to them would be attempting to prevent it. Because the reality is that if we wanted to prevent it, we would get rid of the billionaires, right? And so we are living in this era of supervillainy, right? Like, these people are in space now, right? You have private enterprises that are attaining space travel, which has got to be the dumbest thing that we are allowing anybody to do. Privately, are you kidding me? To take over, like, to get into space, to challenge nations and to challenge their authority and power in space? Are you stupid? I mean, obviously we're stupid. Like, obviously we're stupid. We're very gullible. We're very stupid. But we've known that. That's not new information. And as this catastrophe continues to unfold, and as we see more and more of it, that will become more and more obvious to us. That it will be those of us who are willing to humble ourselves and say, yes, we are very gullible, and yes, we are very stupid. Like, we are easily duped by obvious grifters who maintain their power and prestige through simple base operations of fear and loathing. We don't have within us the cognitive ability to actually see that these people are actively deceiving us. Like, I had a conversation with someone fairly recently who tried to convince me that the liberals aren't actively attempting to deceive us, that they're just in this sort of position through happenstance. And I just think that that's extremely gullible. Like, that's something that an NDPer says, right? An NDPer who wants to see the best in everybody, right? Refuses to believe that rich people who have not had a worry in their lives will ever get into a room with one another and conspire against the populace. Like, we even have recordings of it. Like, what do you need at this stage, right? What do you need to believe that these people are actively attempting to destroy you? Like, what do you need to see? What do you need? And it's really, and I'm not saying this rhetorically. Like, I'm genuinely asking because I want to be able to set out to show it to you, to try to find it for you. What do you need to see to believe that these people are actively attempting to destroy you? Right? That it's not just la-di-da, oh, I guess this thing is happening. Like, what do you need to see to begin to understand and accept that the billionaire class is knowingly, willingly, and willfully attempting to destroy you. Because they certainly are, without a doubt. Like, why do you think they're poisoning your minds with this corporate news drivel? Like, anytime anybody even turns that TV on and tunes in to any of that corporate stuff, it's a win for these guys, right? Like, anytime anybody pays any attention whatsoever to anything that's coming out of a billionaire's mouth, it's a massive win for the billionaire class. They're willing to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to lie and deceive you. Simply the force of their own media presence should convince you. Like, how can you be so gullible to believe that, like, oh, sure, we'll spend $100 million. Sure, we'll spend $2 million, $2 billion rather, to have this entire system of media coverage. But yeah, we're not going to try to manipulate you with it. What are you talking about? Advertisements alone are so manipulative and so evil in the way they present not only the product but the world and you, right? Not only in how they attack you as an individual and try to undercut your own self-confidence in your own self-image in yourself, right? They're also willing to present a product that is obviously fallacious. It's obviously not going to do what it says it's going to do. And then also to present that in a world, like, take a look at car commercials, right? Like, you would walk away from a car commercial if you were just the average sort of a person, which is an extremely gullible sort of dimwit. You're going to take a look at a commercial and you're going to believe that if you don't have a car, you're an inferior person. And that if you do have a car, you're going to be living this life of open freedom and all of this kind of stuff. They're never going to show you, like, being stuck in traffic for two hours in gridlock, right? They're never going to show you that. They're never going to actually talk to you about the pollution. They're never going to talk to you about any of that stuff, right? They're going to show you, like, fast car, slick moving, new Dodge Ram 84323, 558395, right? Like, they're not going to, and you're going to walk away feeling that if you're not a part of that you are an inferior person. And this reinforces itself when you meet somebody who has gotten this vehicle and they believe that they are a better person. Like, these people who are in these big giant trucks, they're driving around with the belief firmly entrenched in their mind that they're better off with that truck than without it, and that they are a different type and living in a different class and a different strata. And so the advertisements themselves are just full of lies that are actively attempting to manipulate you. And you don't think that they're going to do the same thing in terms of our political system? Like, I think you're out to lunch. And that's why these billionaires are so dangerous. Because even if there was a nice billionaire, which there isn't, but even if there was one, even if there was a nice billionaire who was actually interested in helping people, it's still their call. It's still their shot. They're the ones that get to make the decisions because they're the ones that have found themselves at the top of this system, which is designed to destroy itself. Okay, this is the end of me. If you've made it to this point and you are not subscribed, please do. And like, share, send it around, say something nice in the comments. I always like that. All right, guys, I love you all. Good luck.